Hello guys, good morning. So this is actually a random video. मतलब I'm making a video so as to check कि मेरा active recall भी हो जाए and मतलब मेरी revision भी हो जाए. So I'll be teaching a topic of GS2. Basically today there's a topic which is mentioned in the syllabus which is separation of power. So we all know that questions in UPSC have to be written in a particular format. That is obviously middle part is the body one. Starting is has to be done with an introduction and then it has to be concluded with a conclusion, right? So I'll tell you what separation of power is. We actually all know what separation of power is. It's a very basic term. It says that concentration of power, power should not be concentrated into one organ, and thus it has to be divided into multiple organs like executive for legislature is for make legislature, executive, and then is judiciary. Legislature makes the laws, executive is one who implements, and judiciary is one who checks or adjudicates whenever there is a dispute. ठीक है. So अगर ऐसा कोई separation of power का question आता है then how we have to start the question. For example, I'll be giving you various fodder material for introduction. Whatever you find relevant, you can learn that, right? So we can write, for example, this concept was first given by Montesquieu. Actually, this was given by Aristotle in his book Politics, and then was given by Montesquieu. I know I'm not speaking the word correctly. It is not Montesquieu, but so as to remember the spelling, I am just pronouncing it in that way. So it was given in his book Esprit de los. एक सेकेंड यार, सॉरी मेरी पेंसिल डिस्चार्ज हो गई है. सो एक मिनट ये होता है इतने. सो एस्प्रिट, आई एम राइटिंग इट विद अ हैंड, दैट इज़ वाई सच अ बैड हैंड राइटिंग, बट वो चार्ज हो रही है एंड देन आई विल रिज्यूम. So it is Esprit de Lois, this book where separation of power was mentioned, and this book was given by Montesquieu, and also it was given by Aristotle in his book Politics. Then you can write about a brief definition of separation of power. Key separation of power is where power is not concentrated and it is divided or between different organs like executive, legislature, and judiciary. ठीक है. Then you can write about कि this concept of separation of power is not explicitly mentioned in constitution, but yes, this is a part of basic structure, and it was told in Keshwananda Bharati case and later reiterated in Indira Gandhi versus Rajnarayan case, the famous emergency case. इसमें उसको reiterate किया था. Yes, separation of power is a part of doctrine of basic structure. ठीक है. Then you can also write what is actually हमारा aim क्या है. What एक second कि what is the aim, why separation of power is objective. You can say कि objective क्या है separation of power रखने का, so as to prevent the state from turning into to prevent despotism, you can say, or so as to prevent the tyranny of rulers, or so as to prevent majoritarianism. You can use any word, or authoritarianism. I've given you multiple words. Whatever you find is like okay, you can remember that. ठीक है. And also to build or to garner or to maintain the public trust in the governance. Then is to make sure that people do have their civil liberties. Then you can also write key independence of judiciary also this will take care of. ठीक है. So yes, these are the objectives of separation of power. Then you can just make a small diagram representing executive, legislature, and judiciary. ठीक है. Then okay, now we'll study ki what are the provisions in the constitution which are actually supporting separation of power. See, what I said is ki separation of power as a word is not explicitly mentioned in the constitution, but there are different provisions which actually reflect separation of power. So you have to remember it is Article 50, it is Article 53, it is Article 154, then it is 121, 122, it is 105, and it is 361. I'll tell you what is there inside these articles, but एक बार के लिए just remember these articles. I'll repeat. It is Article 50, 53, 154, 121, 122, 105, 361. So just remember, like, learn these articles by heart. Okay. 50 article says that this is a DPSP basically. This says that there is separation of power. There should be a separation of power between executive and judiciary. 53 says that president is the 53 tha, yes. President is the one who exercises the executive power of the union. 154 is same article, but you have to replace the word with governor. 121 says that in parliament you cannot discuss the conduct of judges except for when the removal process is going on. 122 says that in court you cannot discuss the proceedings of parliament. 105 talks about the privileges of the parliamentarians, which actually says that whatever they do on the floor of the parliament, that cannot be challenged in the court. And 361 is the immunity which is given to the governor and the president and the Raj Pramukhs, although Raj Pramukhs are not available today because they were you can say the governor of Part B states. This was the earlier division, Part A, Part B, Part C states, which is now not there. So 361 says that it is talking about the parliamentary privileges in which any act which is done by the president or the governor will not be challenged in the court of law, because actually they are just the titular heads. Only things are being done in their name, rather the decisions are taken on the advice of Council of Ministers, and thus they cannot be called in a court, because they are just doing, rather decisions back in the backdrop is being taken by Council of Ministers. Okay, so these are the provisions which reflect separation of power. And now I'll be telling you ki there is deviation. See, no constitution cannot exhibit a true separation of power. USA, it is said that it is one which reflects the rigid separation of power, and UK is one which represents the loose separation of power, right? So then a deviation in Indian constitution which from separation of power, इसके कुछ provisions है, I'll be telling you that. ठीक है. For example, executive जो है is doing the work of a judiciary, और executive is doing the work of a legislature. अभी हम पढ़ते हैं कहाँ पे executive जो है does the work of a legislature or does the work of a judiciary. See, executive is like prime minister, COM, prime minister, council of ministers, etc. So executive is doing the work of a legislature when there is delegated legislation. See, अगर parliamentarians law बनाने लग गए तो भाई एक साल में एक ही law बनेगा. They actually just pass. Legislature is one which pass the skeletal, वो एक ढांचा पास करते हैं. Rules is something which is made by the executive. Executive, I am talking about both the political executive and the permanent executive. Permanent executive में it is about bureaucrats. ठीक है. So they are the one who make the rules of all the legislations and everything. So it's a delegated legislation is where executive performs the function of a legislature. Okay. Now where is executive performing the function of a judiciary? Executive is performing the function of a judiciary when president exercises the clemency power or the pardoning power under Article 72, that is to pardon, to reprieve, to respite, and then commute, and then all the 5 clemency or the pardoning powers. So yes, he is acting in the judicial capacity. Okay. Now when does legislature acts as executive or acts as judiciary, right? So legislature when acts as executive is yes. See, it has to prepare something rules regarding its proceedings and everything. I'm actually not exactly remembering when is legislature performing the function of a executive. And when is legislature performing a function of a judiciary? I'm not remembering this. I'll have to check it. I'm sorry, guys. And then when is judiciary performing a function of a legislature and that of a executive? See, judiciary basically, uh, fine, I'll just see. Judiciary basically does the function of a legislature because it prepares the rules regarding its court proceedings and practice. So yes, here it is actually doing the work of a legislature. And when does judiciary does the work of an executive? I'm not remembering. I'll have to check this one and then this two. I'll have to check it here. Now let's do the concept of checks and balances. Ki they actually are keeping a check and balances on each other. So we'll just study ki when is executive keeping a check on balance on legislature and on judiciary, right? Wait, executive is keeping a check and balance on legislature. Yes. How does it keeps a check and balance on legislature? See, or when is legislature keeping a check on, I'll just write all the 6 combinations, executive and on judiciary. Similarly, how is judiciary keeping a check and balance on legislature and executive? So now let's do, see, judiciary is keeping a check and balance on legislature is जब भी कोई unconstitutional act pass होता है तो उसको वो null and void declare कर देते हैं. So this is article 32 to 26 where the judiciary has a power of judicial review. ठीक है. और executive पे कब करता है? Executive पे करता है also it can issue the writs under article 32 on the executive entities, and also executive actions पे भी it can it can say it unconstitutional. So in this way judiciary keeps a check on legislature and on executive. Now how does legislature keeps a check on executive? Legislature keeps a check on executive by debates and this discussion and the for एक hour का question hour which happens at the starting of every session. Also legislature for example has to pass the budget. So in this way it actually, and also legislature as in parliament as in जो हमारा लोकसभा है can pass the no confidence motion and can मतलब वो गिरा सकता है executive को. So this in this way legislature keeps a check and balance on executive. And how is legislature keeping a checks and balance on judiciary is by removing, because parliament is one which can remove the judges. ठीक है. So yes, and how is executive now keeping a check and balance on judiciary is by basically doing their appointments. ठीक है. Appointment is done by the executive members of the judges. ठीक है. And how is now executive keeping a check and balance on legislature? See, actually basically executive is something which is derived from the legislature, right? Because for you to become a minister you have to become a MP. ठीक है. वो एक्सेप्शन है कि 6 months तक आप काम चला सकते हो, बट आफ्टर 6 months if you have to continue as a minister then you have to become a legislature, a MP. So these were the different provisions in the constitution which represented checks and balances. I hope things were clear, and sorry यार बीच में कुछ मैं भूल भी रही थी. I'll check it now.